Good morning, and welcome to Life Hacks with Elise. Good morning, Anthony. How are
Hey,
you?
good morning, Elise. Good morning to you. Happy Saturday.
Yes, it is. It's a cloudy Saturday today, but hey. So today, welcome to Life Hacks with Elise. Come on in, share, share, share. I'm really excited about this topic. Mainly, I'm really excited about this topic because I am going to be learning right along with my audience. You know, I think people think that all therapists, do, understand everything, but everybody specializes a little bit differently. So, welcome to my show. This show is dedicated to helping individuals learn what types of treatments are out there so that they can get the best treatment dedicated to themselves. So, joining me today is Anthony Parham, who is a licensed marriage and family therapist. How long have you been doing therapy, Anthony?
I've been in the field 12 years.
Wow, 12 years. That's incredible. And what made you get involved in therapy?
Yeah, so what made me get involved is really, coming from where I came from. I grew up and I came from, I'm from LA and I came from like abuse, neglect, trauma, and things like this. Uh, and I didn't have somebody who, supporting us in the Black community to really like be there as a mentor, as a figure, or anything like this that took me out of that mindset and really just wanting to give back to the community, to the youth that are out there, provide them with the tools to be empowered so that they can take control over their lives, especially in times when they feel isolated or alone.
Yeah, that's amazing. That's amazing. So you use your tool to help give back to the community. And as you've walked through your own healing, you also have a story of hope to help others.
Hmm. Absolutely. Hmm.
That's amazing. And, that's kind of similar to my story is that, I came from not a background of abuse, but I did come from a background of alcoholism and addiction and growing up in that home and lost my father very young, and walked through my own healing and then, came to this place of really God, saying, hey, it's time for you to teach others how to live this victorious life, right?
Yeah,
That you can overcome these challenges. You don't have to like stay in them.
that's
So
right.
today I'm going to be probing your wisdom, okay? Because I would like to know all about this thing called narrative therapy. So, because it is so fascinating to me, because I understand right now, especially now, because all we hear in the media is the narrative, the narrative, the narrative, the narrative, right? So it's kind of a popular word, but nobody really knows what it means if they were to click on Psychology Today and see that you are specializing in narrative therapy, right? What does that mean? Because when I think about it, I think of propaganda. Okay.
Right.
That's what I know. Okay. So let's start with this basic question. What is narrative therapy?
Yeah, so narrative therapy is a therapeutic modality that's used to be able to support individuals in telling their story, right? And so when you think about the way that it's used, like in the news and things like this, it does sound like that. However, it's like not even they're not even close. Uh,
Okay.
right?
That's good
Narrative,
to know, because I
yeah,
want to make sure that somebody's not trying to, like, brainwash me or something in the middle of the story.
right. Because yeah, the word narrative means story, right? And so we
Right.
hear it in the news, it gets, washed over all the time and it turns into this different thing. With narrative, it's really it's an empowerment therapy. And it really takes people from this place of feeling like isolated or alone inside of their story, if they've ever even told their story, and it really brings out and highlights resiliency, and it then empowers people to be able to take
Mhm.
back pen, right? Have you ever felt like you were talking to somebody, or you were in the midst of family or coworkers even, and they start telling your story, and you're like, hold
Mhm.
on, it wasn't even about you.
Right, right.
How did you start talking about my things, right?
Right, right.
And so narrative therapy really empowers people to take back the pen. Right? Instead of being a biographer, we get them to be an autobiographer of their own story because they are the experts of their lived experience.
That's so beautiful. So, I heard you say, in the midst of this, it's like you find the resiliency. So, when I hear that, what I'm thinking, and you can correct me if that's not true, is that even in the midst of their trauma or their story, whatever it is that brought them into therapy, right? That you are helping them kind of pick out where there's resiliency within the trauma. Is that kind of what I'm hearing?
Yeah, a lot of times when we talk about our stories, if we have the opportunity to talk about our stories, we say, and I'll use myself for an example. I use myself for my examples. Uh, my when I used to say my dad was very abusive when I grew up, and I experienced a lot of trauma. Period. I don't talk about from those things. I also learned how to be very mature early. Even though I expressed my emotions, they weren't necessarily the right way. And so I had to learn how to express my feelings and emotions a little bit better. Right. So we don't talk about
Mhm.
the resiliency pieces. A lot of times people just hold on to the baggage of the trauma, and it's understandable why people might do that, right? That sometimes becomes part of their identity. Sometimes it's a secondary gain. If I have been told all my life that I'm not going to do anything with myself, you're not going to be anything, you're not going to do anything, I've internalized that narrative, and now I'm holding on to it. I don't want to let it go because I get gain from that. I actually don't have to try hard if people just don't expect anything of me.
Right. Right.
You get a secondary gain, and you're like, I'm not letting that go. So now with narrative therapy, we get an opportunity to really look at that. Well, show me, tell me through your words, show me how this one worked out for you. What happened then what happened? You're very curious. You take this very curious position, and it's really the therapy of questions. You come in as an investigator. It almost feels like you're a private eye, right? You're coming in and you're just continuously asking questions. Oh, and so depression came around. So when was the first time that you even heard this word of depression? Where did this come from? How did you learn about that word, right? And getting them to break down all of these different models in their mind about what they hear, what they think, what they're speaking. Because with narrative, we believe that there's the dominant narrative that's out there, and that's what everybody else says. The world
Mhm.
says, what your media says, the news says, what your mama says, right? Like everybody else, but what I say. Okay, so then when we talk about our narrative, the dominant narrative usually gets squashes that internal narrative. So a lot of times we don't get to say what we want to say or think what we want to think because we have all of these other people planting these seeds of what something is in our mind. When we have a challenge inside of our minds about, like, for instance, with myself, I was like, am I crazy? Because all of these things are happening to me and nobody's coming to help me. So I guess this
Mhm.
means normal. It's okay for me to be, beat up and things like this, by my dad. Like, this is okay. That
Right.
dominant narrative squashed my own internal narrative, right? So helping people to release that, take back the pen and say, like, no, no, this isn't okay. I believe that I should be treated with fairness, respect, love, compassion, empathy, these types of things. And then helping them work that into the narrative so that they're empowered through that story.
That's beautiful. That is really beautiful because, in my work with people, I see this. I see this where they do kind of own the story. It becomes their story, and it's hard to let go of their story because there is this gain, right?
Mhm.
It's unconscious, obviously. They don't really realize it, and because my work is with trauma, so of course I see that same thing. Now in my work, I would say it's their protector, right? They have this protector part of them that's like, I can't let go of this story. Like,
Mhm.
who am I if you take this piece away from me? So
Mhm.
this narrative therapy, being able to like you say, take the pen, rewrite the story
Mhm.
is just a beautiful piece. I can see that if I even look at it through my own practice of working with trauma, right? Because I kind of say it is like there's a part of you that's protecting you. It doesn't want to let go, right?
Mhm.
Right? Which is amazing.
And there's like those underlying things too when you talk about it wanting to protect you. That's like kind of like the underlining meaning for a lot of the emotions that we experience. It's protection. And when you can put those two and recognize, like, there's this part of me that wants to be free, and there's another part of me that wants to continue to hold on to this pain, right? And the
Right.
underlying cause is, like, in this pain I have comfortability. In this freedom that might seem a little scary, they're polar opposites, but they have the same underlying meanings of what they're trying to accomplish. and being able to bridge that gap through a new narrative.
Right. Right. I'm just going to kind of do a commercial break because I really think people need to hear this. This is so, so good. So I'm just going to say, whoever's on here, just share, share, share. Because I really think hearing what you have to say is just, it's really good because I don't think people really think about the things that happen to them as a story,
Yeah. Mm.
right? Because it's not what happened to me, it's who I am.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And we internalize that.
Exactly.
Mhm.
So on to my next question, because I could just listen to you. Why did you choose narrative therapy? Because there's so many different modalities out there. Why narrative therapy?
Yeah, it's funny. Some people are like, I didn't choose this life chose me. It's a trip. I was in the Bay Area in grad school actually, and my mentor, Dr. Armando Gonzalez, he actually is the one who taught me narrative therapy. I had heard about it in school. You learn about it. However, I really was mentored into this, and I think what was so empowering is he used his own narrative therapy techniques on me when this happened, but. Uh, I was in class one day, and this was when I had my emotional awakening, right? So up until then, I really, like I said, I hadn't really learned how to express my feelings. I hadn't really learned that I had these feelings, and that's kind of the situation for many of BIPOC folk who are growing up, right? You're taught to suppress the emotions. Feelings, what are those, right?
Right,
So
right.
yeah, never
It's
let them
not
see you
safe.
sweat. Yeah, all of these things. You
Right,
crying, I give you something to cry about, right?
right.
Um,
Well, you got that too,
oh,
Anthony.
all of that, yeah, the switch and
I
all,
remember
yeah,
those parenting words.
right. So I never really learned these. I didn't have the emotional intelligence awoken, and we were in class. He said something, and it just sparked all of these emotions. And I kid you not, at least I had every emotion possible at one time in the moment, and
In
it was
class?
in class. Now, keep in mind, in the Bay, your cohort is like 12 people. Okay, so I'm number 13 in the class. So there's nowhere for me to hide. I mean, they're all literally looking at like, what is happening? Right? Versus when I was in San Diego, there was a cohort of like 50, right? So I have nowhere to hide. This is happening. And he calmly has the students, he's like, please back away, let him have his space, right? He can work through this. And I just went through the emotions right there. Now, after that, I would leave. Okay, like I was like, I'm not going back to school, right? I have all the shame, embarrassment is
Right,
influencing me, and
right.
things like this. I'm gone. And Dr. Gonzalez hits me up. He was like, "Hey, I wanted to talk to you about this paper, blah blah blah. Can you come see me in my office?" I didn't want to tell him I wasn't going to do it, stay in school anymore. I went to his office, and he started using narrative therapy right there in the office with me. It's like, yeah, so I'm curious to know, it sounds like this and that. We start chopping it up about each other's life phenomenology and where we came from and things like this.
Yeah,
Um,
big word, phenomenology.
our, our history, right? So we
You're gonna
start
have to break that one down for me.
and he's using narrative interventions right there. And I was like, yo, what was that? At the end of it all, because he had basically helped me talk myself back into coming back to school. And
Well,
um,
he helped you talk yourself into coming back. He didn't talk you into coming back to
No,
school.
it was my narrative.
Wow.
It was something that internally I wanted to do the whole time. However, I was afraid and didn't have the courage to face those things that I knew would come. Right. This
Yeah.
emotional awakening was just the beginning, right? Like that was kind of like the beginning of the journey for me with diving in, because in your master's program they make you really look at yourself. You really have to break yourself down, and they make you reevaluate who you are, where you are, your entirety of you. So that was just like the tip of the iceberg, and that allowed for me to be able to come in and recognize, here's my resiliency from me having this emotional experience. I don't want to say breakdown. It was emotional experience, right? It was the catalyst for me to develop my emotional intelligence. It was the catalyst for me being able to actually properly go through my journey like learning how to express myself in a way where people could understand me, and I could also feel valid in my own narrative, right, as opposed to changing my script up to fit somebody else's narrative.
Right.
It was such an incredible moment. So I was like, you gotta, I need to learn how you did that, and and he began to teach me and show me different ways. From there, it just kind of took off because it's really a mindset. Narrative is really a mindset. It's my bread and butter that I use as a foundation when I'm inside of the therapy room. However, I cross interventions from different things as I need to. Right? It's my bread and my butter, but I also got like jam and whatever else I need to add depending on the meat that we cooking.
Right.
So um, I really love it because of how empowering it is, especially it's empowering for anyone, especially though for our people of color. Extremely empowering for our people of color because a lot of times, like I said, they haven't had the opportunity to tell their side, and it's their stories always being told for them. And so, really bring them into this space where they get to have these conversations and keep it 1,000, not just with me, but like with themselves first and
Yeah.
foremost. And there's something humbling about that when you can be honest with yourself and know you're not going to feel shame or guilt or judgment inside of the therapeutic room with your partner, your therapist being your partner in this journey. Um, yeah, I had something else to say about that, but you might bring it back and I'll jump into that afterwards.
Okay. Okay. So that actually ties into my next question, right? Which is, I'm a cognitive behavioral therapist, which is all about mindset as well, right? So what is the difference between cognitive behavioral therapy and narrative therapy from your perspective?
Yeah, many of the therapies are similar in terms of what we're trying to accomplish, right? We really want people to have stability and empowerment at the end of it all. I think most therapies are around empowerment. I think the differences are just in the way that we would go about it. Maybe the interventions that we discuss or things like this. In CBT, well, let me go to narrative. So in narrative, we really take this one down approach. Like I kind of sit back and I'm watching the movie, right? I'm watching the movie, and my client is watching the movie with me because they're
Mhm.
telling it, and it's like, did you see that? We're experiencing some things for the first time together as we're watching the movie, the narrative. Okay, and I get to ask them about, okay, so who's that? Who's this person, right? When did they come into your life? So it's really kind of a tag team approach, and you're with them this whole time. You're almost kind of uh, you're the mentee in narrative therapy, and they are the mentors as you go
Mhm.
through the process. So I think CBT does have a more, the therapist kind of is the expert in terms of giving the strategies and interventions for being able to change the way that people think, feel, and express their behaviors. So I think that's one big difference there. I think also in the way that we get to the underlining piece of it. In narrative therapy, we use something called deconstructing the narrative, which basically
Mhm.
means break it down, right? And we break down the narrative through a different type of lens. So in CBT, thoughts, feelings, and behaviors are the triad, right? And they work off of each other in a triadic form. In narrative therapy, we say things like we do externalizing. So in
Mhm.
CBT, the problems reside with inside of the person. In
Right.
narrative
Right.
therapy, we externalize the problems or get them out of us. So I am not the problem. The problem is the problem.
Okay.
So when I do therapy, even with couples, I point this out too. You two are not the problem. The problem is the problem. So
Right.
communication is the problem. Y'all ain't the problem. Communication is the problem. And if you're not the problem, it makes it a lot. It breaks people down easier so that they can do the work. Have you ever tried to solve a 10-digit math problem in your head?
Yes.
It's difficult.
It doesn't work. No, it does not work.
Yeah, you get lost on like 4 or 5, and you're like, all right, this is too much.
Right. You're like 4 plus 5 plus 6. Wait, which number am I?
Right, exactly. Now, if you put it on a whiteboard and you write it out for yourself and you can see it now, it's a lot easier to work that number, right? To find the solution. And so, similarly with narrative therapy, we're taking the things that are happening. You don't have depression, you don't have anxiety, you don't have fear. You are influenced by these things. They're not
Right.
naturally part of your homeostasis, your natural being, right? You are influenced by these things, or you're vulnerable to these things because of something that's happening around you in your environment. Okay. And so, what the way that I would do this with somebody, for instance, do something called a like it's like it's like a board on a whiteboard. What I would do is basically I would write out thoughts, feelings, um, the effects or the actions, which is the behaviors, teams up with interventions, or I'm sorry, intentions of the problem and their preferred way of being, right? What they would like to see. So the thoughts, I would ask them first, we would get the label. So somebody who was influenced by ADHD, for instance, like a kid who is maybe 8 or 9 years old, mom and dad are like, this kid is off the walls, ADHD, right? Typical things that happen when we hear those things in America with parents, right?
Right.
And so I would talk to the kid like, okay, I want to hear about what's happening for you. Well, I get really excited and I have a
Oh,
different
wait, hold on a minute. So this actually works with children too.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
Oh,
So
that's
most of my therapy is with kids and teens. Hmm.
wow. Did not I sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt, but you kind of threw this out there like I'm working with a kid that has ADHD. So this isn't just about an adult who's been through something, but it also works with the child, with children and teens.
So I've done narrative therapy with youths as young as 5 years old. Same thing with MER.
Wow.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Because with we can draw, we write. I've actually taken pictures of the stories they've told. Right, like so with when I break it down for them. Remember I talked about taking back the pen, and we want to write an
Mhm.
autobiography. So when I do this with them, I typically ask them like, okay, so what is this called? Like it's the distraction monster. Oh, bet. Okay, cool. So when the distraction monster comes around, what kind of things are you thinking about? Well, my thoughts get really squirrely. I can't really think straight. I have fog in my brain, right? These are the things that they say. Now, I've put these labels on the whiteboard already. And what I typically would do is because again, I'm trying to empower them. I want
Right.
them to write this on the board themselves. So I give them the pen and they actually write it out. If their penmanship is not great, it's okay. I tell them as long as they understand, it's fine. Okay. They can do symbols, they can do writing. If they want me to write it, then I will, but I never invite myself into that space because it's their world and I'm just a guest. They put these things up there, my thoughts are blah blah blah, oh, okay, well, what kind of feelings come around? Well, sadness because I know my parents are going to be upset if I don't get it done, right? Sometimes my body just kind of feels like it's got a jolt of energy inside of it. Okay, cool, cool. What do we want to call it? Lightning. Great. Right, we write that on the board. We move
That
into
is so amazing.
yeah, we move into like the effects of these things. Okay, so when the brain gets foggy and you feel lightning going through your body, what kind of things do you do? Well, sometimes I start to get up. Sometimes I like to talk because it's just everything is running so fast in my mind. Okay, well, sometimes when lightning is happening, our emotions like to team up with each other. So you said something about sadness earlier. Was there another emotion that it was tag teaming with? Sometimes when we feel anxious or anxiety is around us, there's also fear that's behind it. We don't see it, right? So psychoeducation, giving them this education around how emotions tag team with each other to influence their behaviors also. And then asking them, what's the purpose of the attention monster? Well, I think the purpose for the reason why it's around, right? What I would say to a kid is like, why is it here? Why do you think the attention monster is here? I might use the purpose for a teen or an adult. Well, I don't know. I think sometimes I just get really bored, or maybe I'm too tired, or I need a break. Okay. So you're feeling, and then that's where we can start giving different
Yeah,
definitions and understanding. And then we ask them, well, what would you want it to be? What would you want to do if you could have it your way? And that pen in your hand was a wand. What would you do? Right? Some magical thinking and stuff like this. And then they plot their own preferred narrative. Now we have something to work with. I've got everything I need now in order to help them restructure and reconstruct and reauthor their narrative.
that
So
is so beautiful. That's just, when I because I do cognitive behavioral therapy, so that is very different because it's like, what are your thoughts? How are your thoughts affecting your feelings, right? But this idea, I think the beauty of it is the idea that we are the author of our own autobiography,
Hmm.
right? And being able to externalize even for with because I'm always trying to take, okay, there's this type of therapy that I don't use, narrative therapy. There's the types of therapy that I use. Okay, so it has to kind of like fit in my Rolodex, right? Like I know that's an old term, but it's got to go into my brain in a place where it can attach, right?
Mhm.
And just thinking about this idea that you're helping, that through this narrative therapy, they get to, like, calling it the attention monster, right?
Yeah.
Or the distraction monster. Okay. It's not me, it's this thing. It's this thing. That's the part that I'm like, that is just beautiful because with cognitive, I can see it. It's me. It's my thoughts, and I have to work on my thoughts, right? But if I can take it out, put it out on a piece of paper, you almost want me to study narrative therapy, but I'm not
Oh,
going.
there you go. Larry, come on in.
You offer classes and training yet? Hello? Because it is just, that's an exciting kind of thought process, is like I can label it out here and not,
Mhm.
especially when I think getting started early with children, because sometimes they haven't built up the defenses, I think, of an adult, right? This protector, they just know that this is me and I'm bad.
Exactly.
Right. And
Exactly.
so being able to say, no, 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 I'm not bad. I just have this distraction monster that I got to tame.
Ah,
Right. I got to tame and train it. Okay. Cause it's like, it's acting like I have no control. Okay.
and people respond differently and will react differently when you are the problem and you are the issue. People become defensive, right? They're more susceptible to being defensive in those situations because it's a me issue now, right? And so when there's a difference between somebody who is exhibiting problematic behaviors and someone who is a problem. If
Right.
you are being if somebody's talking to you and you're being defined as a problem, I don't want. Who are you?
Right.
Tell me about myself, right? However,
Exactly.
come from the place of we had a conversation, and I felt like I wasn't able to say everything I wanted to say because I was being cut off. I wonder if we can work towards a solution with that. I don't hear me being a problem at all. I hear us now talking about respect in a mutual song, right? And so I'm more open to trying that versus being like, hey, you're an issue and I can't talk to you because you talk too much and you talk over me. In today's society, people are like, you know what? Let me just block them on every social media that exists in the world, right? So giving people an opportunity to take that back and seeing themselves separate from the problem, separate from the entity.
Yeah, that is really beautiful. Okay. But, I could, like I said, this thing could go on because this is really good. But I need to get through all of the things. So for your clients that are coming in with depression and anxiety, what would you say to them? How does it help their depression and anxiety to just like rewrite my story? So what? If I rewrite my story, but I have depression, so
Yeah.
what? Right?
Yeah, absolutely. And so this kind of goes to a little bit of what we were talking about, right? Being able to take back the pen.
Hmm.
Or more likely than not, when my kids and teens are coming in, even the adults, they have been given this label of depression for much of their life,
Right.
for a significant amount. And labels run the world, right? And so when they come in and I'm trying to really support them and they allow me into that space to support them, narrative really, again, empowers them and helps them see the resiliency points in their life. And we also have this really big conversation around emotions and how we can really look at emotions. Emotions are energy. So when they come in and they say they're influenced by depression, and we do that thing that I was talking about, and we get to sadness, we get to guilt, shame, hurt, all of these different things, we get to break it down even further and really see it for what it is. When I have this conversation with them about energy and emotions, I let them know if you can feel sad about something, right? You can and you can isolate. You can also have an experience of gratitude that that was a part of your life. right? So if somebody's coming in for grief, because I've done bereavement therapy for 7 years now, if somebody comes in with bereavement, things with bereavement, and they're asking me that, um, this is how we can have that conversation. When I talk about, anger, if you can be angry and you can be destructive, we can change the narrative to switch that energy over into being angry and passionate to fix something and create something, a structure, and put something in place to create a change. Things that were going on, or things that continue to go on inside of the world, they anger me. However, they give me passion. I use that anger and change the energy up so that I'm not destructive and tearing down things. However, I'm using it and being passionate and trying to create different systems to put in place to counteract the negativity that's happening out there and protect people. So
Right.
having that conversation around that. So with depression, anxiety, if you can feel anxious or be vulnerable to anxiety and be afraid, right? That tag team with the emotions, you
Hmm.
can also feel anxious and you can be excited about the possibility of your success. You remember Independence Day when I'm going way back now, when Will Smith was getting ready to go out there and fight the aliens, and his sergeant came up and said, "You're real fidgety today, soldier. You all right? You ready for this?" And he said, "Yes, sir. I'm just anxious to whoop ET's ass." Right? So he was excited. That was a really great
Right.
of the other side of anxiety. And a lot of people just see it on one side, and really helping them to see through narrative therapy, you're going to get your journal. Let's say that this youth is 12. So we are on season 12, and they got, a week
I
before
like that. They're on
their
season 12.
birthday, right? A week before their birthday. They're on season 12. We're on episode 360. And we're going to start here.
Right.
Maybe we're late to arriving, but we're going to be early finishers because you get your pen back. And they get to now change the way that they have thought about this. They get to reflect back on all from birth to or to season 11. They get to catch up. They get to binge watch it in a way where it feels safe. They feel protected. They feel comforted and guided through the space, right? Because, like I said, I'm sitting there right next to them watching the movie. We sharing popcorn, right, and comments as we go through. Um, so,
Literally or figuratively, because I'm coming to you if you offer popcorn. Okay.
it really does take this one down approach, and I love that it does that and allows for people to experience these things where they came from, or where other people have come from when they've given these labels, and they get to change it to create something for them that makes it easier for them to be able to live their life to something that's preferred, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, that's what I would say to individuals who are influenced by anxiety and depression, how narrative therapy can be supportive to them.
I even love the language that you use because you don't say who have or suffer with depression or
Right.
anxiety, but your language is who are influenced by uh,
Hmm.
depression or anxiety. Even that you can tell is part of that narrative lens because every other lens says, you suffer with depression and anxiety, which means it's something that's internalized inside of you versus you're influenced, which means it's something in your environment is influencing you, right? And so again, an externalization of an internal process, right? Which is just, wow, really good.
There's a really cool intervention too, the house metaphor that we use in narrative therapy, where the individual is the house, right? And so, the house has all of the different things. So the windows are the eyes, right? They got a ring door system on the front so they can see what emotions are coming up and who are they tag teaming with. You have your driveway that kind of gives you, is kind of like your fuse, so you know how much time you have before you're allowed to be, you're allowing these influences in. You talk about where the safe space is inside of your home, right? So for a lot of people, it's their bedroom. Okay, cool. So your bedroom is kind of like your heart space, right? This is where you feel comforting. This is where you can do your coping and things like this. And so just really building up this metaphor for them through a visualization so that they understand when these things are happening, how to protect themselves, and then giving themselves grace and saying, hey, if you don't acknowledge that they're here, guess what? They're going to be on your front porch all day. And every time you go somewhere, you're going to see them. And then they're going to try to do things to you and make you do things that you don't want to do. So when we acknowledge them and see them and say, hey, what up, anxiety? Okay, look, you've been coming around all week. I have now you have control, right? You've been coming around all week. I'm gonna let you play for 5 minutes and then I'm gonna ask you to leave. You're giving them permission now to experience that. Where in other therapies, it can feel overwhelming if you're saying you have all the control and you are, you have to do this in order to keep it away. Instead of acknowledging that it's there, you're going to acknowledge that it can come in and it can do whatever it's going to do for 5 minutes around your boundaries that you get to put up, right? So it's like showing them they have control without telling them you are the only thing that's keeping these things from happening. And they get to bounce around, and then you can kindly walk them out. You're building those skills up with them instead of for them in that process.
Yeah, that is so amazing. I mean, we are just like flying through time here. Okay, so I know a lot of this has already been discussed, kind of interwoven, but we're going to kind of take the next question just so that we can have sort of a clearer path. If somebody was coming in to see you, what would they expect in their treatment? I mean, I know you've touched on the little things, but what would they expect to see? Is it homework? Is it worksheets? Is it what would they see?
In a new session, or we been we've
No,
been
so they're coming in. This is a brand new client. What are their if they're coming in and they're a brand new client? What would they expect in therapy?
So first and foremost, when we link up together, I like to really learn about who they are. So I give them an introduction to what narrative therapy is, who I am, what narrative therapy is, what other things I like to do around it, and what I like is uh, I do disclose my kind of upbringings, my narrative, right? I give them a preview, a trailer of my phenomenology, right? My experience.
That's also very different because a lot of therapies say that you're just supposed to be this sort of distant person in the room, right? But you're
Exactly.
actually connecting with them by saying, "Hey, I get it because here's my story,"
Mhm.
right?
And I haven't had a single person yet who has had an issue with that. Fortunately, I recognize it may not be for everyone, and some people may come in the room and say like, "Oh, I want somebody who's more zipped up than that." However,
You said zipped up, right?
right? However, that's not how I roll because that's not the narrative I choose to reflect. I want people to see, the narrative of me being me. I'm gonna be
Right.
me, right? Be yourself, and others will adjust. So I come in as myself like that and give them that piece,
I like that.
and in return, I kind of set the stage by leading through example of how we're going to do this and where we're going and what this can look like. So oftentimes I'll give them the narrative around some of the things that I have had challenges with. And depending on the age and their developmental levels, maybe I won't say specifically, that I was beat up by my dad, right? Maybe I'll say I've had some things happen to me in the past that were not very nice, right? So depending on their age and things like that.
Right.
However, it helps them to kind of, I'm kind of like, again, giving them a trailer of what we're doing and where we're going. And my ask of them is even to just, I use a lot of humor. I'm like, humor yourself. I want you to humor yourself in these situations and have grace with yourself and compassion, because you are not a chia pet. You are not going to grow overnight. However, if you allow yourself to feel that grace and love, this can be an incredible journey, and you're going to get you're going to get out of it what you put into it, right? So really sending these empowering messages early and often. um, a lot of people, they've never had a therapy like this. It's different. I situate myself differently in narrative therapy because this is what we do as a narrative therapist, than other therapies, like you said. So they can feel empowered. They're going to feel some hope. I loved expressing gratitude with them, because they're inviting me into a space that maybe no one's ever seen. And that's an extremely important piece for a lot of people.
Yeah.
I may be the first person that this individual has had these conversations with, and that's scary. So that can be a scary thing to happen, um, and it's a very vulnerable space to live in. So I allow myself, to, I allow myself to take those approaches to step down in the way that I approach the situation, so that they can feel comfortable and they know, like, okay, this cat is he's a real person. Like, yes, I keep it 1,000 with all my clients. They know they know that. I don't I call them out in those situations where I see something, And I'm going to question like, okay, so break that down because it's not making sense for me. Help me make it make sense. Right. And so I call them out on those types of things and I give them a sample of that early so that they can understand I may bring you into this space of, the pit. I'm never going to leave you there. I will always walk with you so that you can get out. And it's also important for them to recognize that in this pit, a lot of times we're only looking face forward. But if we look around the pit, the narrative changes because there's so much to learn in there. And now we have a ladder from coming in and out of that pit, and it allows for us to come as we please. We can come into the pit to learn and reflect instead of just going in to isolate and be in a frozen state of mind in one direction. We can move in and out freely as we need to,
Yeah,
depending on what we want and what we need in the moment.
that is, you know, I think because you do narrative therapy, your analogies are just incredible, right? Like you can actually like see the picture like you're looking at a book, right? Like here's the picture. They're in a pit. We have to go to the pit. We have to get some things, but we have a ladder. We're going to bring you back out.
Yep.
And that's just really, really I'm an analogy person, so in my sessions, I'm constantly using visual pictures because I think when people can see the visual picture, they can, kind of be able to go, "Oh, okay, I get what you're saying now," versus it just being plain language without a visual that people can use. So this
Mhm.
has been like such an exciting. Every single time I interview somebody, I'm like, "You're gonna have to come back." Feel like even though we've talked all this time, we barely scratched the surface because and I know that I've known you for quite some time.
Yeah,
So I
right.
also know that, I've seen you walking around and you have these headset things that people can put on and you do NLP and I'm like, what is all this stuff? Okay. Because I think this whole package thing, we're never just one stop shop therapists because if we're going to be client centered, we have to be able to move with our clients at the moment. So maybe I have a plan. Maybe even with narrative therapy, I have a plan,
Yep.
but you come in and you're completely activated. Okay, that plan might need to be put down and we might
Yep.
have to be working on something else because something triggered you that week and you're just not there for the ABC steps.
Yep. Yep. And even with that trigger, we use activated, right? Like it activated you.
Right. Right. I switched it. You hear I said activated at first. They come in
Mhm.
completely activated, but they'll come in and be like, "I'm so triggered." Right? Like
Facts. Yes, facts.
So I don't really use the word activated, triggered a lot because I think again, like the word narrative right now, it's kind of in this like overuse kind of.
Mhm.
I always say that therapy goes through this flavor of the day, right? It's like the flavor of the day. Everybody like starts to get to know the word and suddenly the word is like used. Okay.
Mhm.
So that's why you heard me switch because I use activated, but then my clients might be like activated. So I just switched over to triggered, right? Does that All right. So in the last couple of minutes here, so this is called Life Hacks with Elise. So not only do I like to give my clients an indoor look at what it would be like to be with a therapist who uses something different because every therapist is not for every person and every therapeutic technique is not for every person.
Yeah.
So being able to um, you know reach out and you know give information, okay, is what my passion is because my whole passion is not like whether or not I make $1 million. My passion is, can we bring healing to the world?
That's right.
Okay, who needs it bad? So my last question that I ask all of my guests on my show is, what tips can you share with your audience to help them right now, just some brief tips that could help them if right now they're in the middle of experiencing it, or they've heard something that connected in this video.
Mhm. Yeah, I think the biggest one that I would like to share with individuals and families would be, recognize the power of your tongue and understand the power
That's
of your tongue.
beautiful.
Your tongue is the single most smallest member of the body and the strongest, yet it has so much power. And when you say something, you can either build up a nation or you can destroy one just with a single word. So we live with ourselves 365 days a week, 52 weeks a year, and however many hours that is. We need to recognize, are we building nations with the words that we're saying to ourselves, or are we destroying them, and why? The other part is for my parents out there, please be mindful that what you say to your children, you are saying to your children's children. It will echo down generationally. And just because something worked in the past with your parents, with you, doesn't mean you have to repeat that cycle. You have an option. This is your choice. This is your empowerment, and you get to do something different with it. So make a choice that you want to be able to pass down generationally. If you want it to end, end it in remembering your power. All of you, remember your power.
That's beautiful. Yeah, I'm gonna, you know, I even need to listen to that because that is the truth. Like the power of the tongue,
Mhm.
and it can affect, children's children. When I talk to my clients, especially my Christian clients, right? I always say, you right now are the Abraham. You're being called out from among your people.
Right.
So your generations behind you, you're the one that's being called out to change the trajectory for the generations that come.
Hmm.
And so that is like such a powerful thing. And so we're going to end right there because I cannot say it better than you, Mr. Parham. This was an incredible interview. Again, I hope that you would be willing to come back because I know there is so much else that you also do.
Yeah.
Um, I have clients who have been walking in talking about how they got trained in NLP, and
Yeah.
I am totally lost. I don't know how that's conflicting with what I'm doing or if it's helping. I have no idea. So we're going to have to get you back on to talk about that part of your work as
Yeah.
well, and so that
Absolutely.
you can educate me on that one because it's always about growth. And if you ever decide that you're going to do a training in narrative therapy for for dummies, give me up, okay?
I got you. And you just missed one yesterday. I just did one for San Diego Center for Children yesterday.
Yeah, that would be your fault.
I'll get you on
Somebody didn't
the next
tell
one.
me, huh?
And I'll get you on the next one for sure.
For sure, let me in, okay? Because even if I have the basics, to have it go along with what I do would be just an incredible journey.
Yeah.
So, thank you for being willing to take your wonderful Saturday. Um, we may not have had a lot of people on right now that are looking, but I know this is going to be shared because we always have a lot of people that share. And my goal is just to get it into as many hands as possible so that people can learn and understand what we do and understand that we all do something different. We all come from different backgrounds, and
Yep.
yet we all are on the same page. We just want to see people whole, healthy, and living a vital life,
That's right. And
right?
yeah, I appreciate you bringing me into this space too. It's really dope to see how you've brought all of us together to be able to have these very necessary and important conversations, especially during this time in the world. It's super crucial and critical. So I thank you as well for allowing me into that space.
All right. Well, for those of you who are watching both online and live, thank you so much for calling. If you want to get a hold of Anthony, he's at Circle of Life Therapies. What's your email?
At Circle of Life Therapies for IG and Facebook. And then email is Anthony LMFT, as in licensed marriage and family therapist, at gmail.com. So Anthony LMFT at gmail.com.
Okay, so if you want to get a hold of him, please do. If something's stuck, he's the man to go to. And we will see you guys next time on Life Hacks with Elise. Bye
That's
bye.
right. Peace to your journey.